The Entourage, by Duane Penmanship. Chapter 1, Dreams from the Block. Before anybody ever called him Big Ben, he was just Benny Blackwell from 112th Street. The block was loud, rough, and alive. A place where basketball courts doubled as debate stages, corner stores were community centers, and every summer night smelled like fried food, sweat, and somebody's mama's bad cooking spilling out the window. Benny grew up in a two-bedroom apartment that was always too small for the noise inside it. His parents worked hard, his pops at the warehouse, his mom's at the nursing home, and neither of them had much patience for excuses. His father's favorite line was, but Benny had other ideas. He wanted to rap, not just spit a couple verses at the lunch table. He wanted the whole life. Flashy chains, fast cars, women who looked like they stepped out of a magazine, the kind of respect you didn't have to ask for. And in those teenage years, he swore he was this close to making it happen. It was always him, David the King Dennis, Shorty Mike, and Tone Tone, the original crew. They battled other kids in the park for bragging rights. They freestyled in hallways, over beats tapped out on lunchroom tables. They'd hit parties they weren't invited to, just to see if they could shut the whole thing down with a couple of bars and a fight or two. The King wasn't the best rapper back then. Hell, Benny thought he had better wordplay, but David had something else. That voice, that style, that fearlessness to grab the mic like he was already headlining Madison Square Garden. He knew how to look important even when nobody knew his name. Benny remembers one summer night like it happened yesterday, an impromptu rap battle in front of the rec center. The crowd kept getting bigger, people spilling out into the streetlights, chanting and laughing. Benny got his round in and thought he'd killed it, until the King stepped up. The man didn't just rap, he owned the space. Every head in the crowd turned his way, and Benny caught his first taste of what it felt like to stand next to the main attraction. And just like that, the hierarchy was set. David was the star. Benny, he was the loyal one, the muscle, the guy you wanted at your back when things went left. They all had run-ins with the cops, curfew tickets, trespassing charges, the occasional stolen bike situation, parents yelling, punishments handed out, lectures they half listened to. But when you've got a crew, trouble feels like a badge of honor. They weren't thinking about tomorrow. By 17, Benny had already racked up a small collection of girlfriends, big dreams, and bad habits. Music was the plan, but plans in the inner city are like old sneakers. They wear out faster than you think. Still, every night after the streetlights came on, the crew was together, the entourage before it even had a name. And Benny figured as long as they stuck together, success was just a matter of time. Chapter 2, First Taste of the Life. Benny was 22 the first time he felt the real weight of the life. Not the corner store heroics, not the block party battles, but the kind of access and attention you only get when people think you're somebody. It happened the summer David the King Dennis started catching buzz on the local scene. He'd been doing small showcases, freestyling on pirate radio, and hustling mixtapes out the trunk. Word spread fast. He was the one to watch. And wherever the King went, Benny went too. One Friday night, they rolled up to a club in the city. No line, no ID check, no cover. The bouncer didn't just wave them in. He dapped Benny like they were old friends. Inside, the DJ stopped mid-track just to announce. Heads turned. Girls stared. Guys moved out the way. Benny played it cool, but inside, he was floating. The drinks came free. Bottles of Ciroc appeared like magic. Strangers slapped him on the back, telling him they heard of him. He wasn't sure how much of it was true, but it didn't matter. The feeling was real. Then came Jada, tall, smooth-skinned, long hair cascading down her back, wearing a dress that made it hard for any man to look her in the eyes for long. She'd modeled in a couple of online clothing ads and carried herself like she belonged on every magazine cover. The first night they talked, she told Benny straight. By right, she meant expensive. Benny knew it, and he liked the challenge. The problem was, Benny's regular hustle wasn't built for luxury. He wasn't clocking in at a 9 to 5 and rap money. That was non-existent. But being with Jada meant designer bags, 5-star dinners, and vacations you had to pay for in full before they even booked the flights. So Benny turned to what he called quick flips. Fake checks, credit card scams, reselling electronics that fell off a truck. It wasn't new to him, just more frequent now. Days were for plotting and scheming, nights for drinking and networking, weekends for being seen. And through it all, the king kept moving up. When David landed a spot opening for a big-name rapper on tour, Benny was there for every show, every hotel party, every photo op. Backstage passes became as normal as bus rides. We dispensaries started comping him eighths. Liquor store owners slid bottles across the counter with a wink. Benny didn't realize it yet, but this was the first stage of the addiction he'd never admit to. The one that didn't come in a bottle, blunt, or pill. The addiction to being close to fame. Chapter 3, Backstage Pass. Benny wasn't on the flyer. He wasn't holding a mic. But if you were anywhere near the backstage area at a King show, you'd swear Big Ben was somebody. It was the way he moved, slow, deliberate, with that I belong here expression that made security nod instead of question. He knew the right people to dap, the right girls to wink at, the right corners to stand, and so everyone saw him, but nobody asked too many questions. The tour wasn't stadiums, not yet, but the clubs were packed shoulder to shoulder. The lights would go low, the DJ would drop that first beat, and the crowd would roar before the king even touched the stage. Benny would be off to the side, grinning like it was his win too. Backstage was another world. The air hung heavy with smoke, not just weed, but the sweet, syrupy smell of flavored vape pens and whatever cheap incense somebody thought could cover it up. Folding tables sagged under the weight of chicken wings, styrofoam plates, bottles of Hennessy, and girls perched on the edges like they were waiting for casting calls. Local rappers hovered nearby, hoping for a verse or even a handshake from the king. Promoters made sure Benny's cup stayed full, not because he was special, but because they figured keeping him happy meant keeping the king happy. The perks were endless: free clothes from local streetwear brands, bags of the best weed in the city, VIP passes to after parties. Benny didn't have to pay for anything unless he wanted something extra, and even then, somebody was always willing to look out for the king's boy. But the attention came with problems. One night after a show in Oakland, a rival crew showed up backstage. Old street beefs, petty words exchanged, too much liquor, the usual recipe for disaster. Voices got loud, chests bumped, and suddenly Benny was in the middle, hands up, telling everyone to cool it, while reaching under his jacket just in case. Security broke it up before it got ugly, but the message was clear: rolling with a star meant inheriting his enemies too. Later, in the tour van, the king laughed it off, pouring Benny another drink. Benny just nodded, sipping slow. He wasn't about to admit it, but part of him liked the danger. It made him feel alive. Chapter 4, The Attention Drug. The thing about perks is, they're addictive. Benny didn't notice it at first, but after a year of running with the king, he couldn't imagine walking into a spot and not being treated like royalty. Free bottles, free weed, front-of-the-line entry. It was oxygen now. He started carrying himself like his name was on the billboard too. Walking into liquor stores, he expected the clerk to throw in a little something extra. At dispensaries, if the butt tender didn't greet him with a smile, he'd mutter, "They must not know who I am." The worst part, he believed it. At home, it was a different story. His kids barely saw him. He'd drop off some cash here and there, but birthdays and school events weren't his thing. His baby mothers, 3 women who knew him better than most, were tired of excuses. Benny didn't even flinch. His response was the same every time: "You don't understand the grind." But it wasn't grind, it was drift. Every night blurred into the next. Club, after party, hotel room, sleep until noon. His mother kept calling, telling him to get a trade, learn something useful, set himself up before life passed him by. His father just shook his head and stopped bringing it up. Benny was convinced they just didn't see the bigger picture. The truth. There wasn't one. He wasn't writing verses, wasn't recording, wasn't building anything. He was just there, soaking up the king's shine and convincing himself it was his own. But attention is a dangerous drug. It makes you arrogant, impatient, reckless. It makes you think you're owed something you haven't earned. And Benny was hooked. Chapter 5, Cracks in the Crew. By the time the king's second mixtape dropped, the entourage had gotten bigger. New faces, new energy, new problems. Benny didn't like it. These weren't the guys from the block. They didn't grow up dodging the same cops, didn't take the same beatings, didn't share the same memories of sleeping 4 deep on a couch after a house party. These new dudes were industry friends, stylists, hype men, weed carriers who looked like they'd never thrown a punch in their lives. And they looked at Benny like they were wondering the same thing he used to hear from teachers in high school. What exactly do you do here? One night after a show in Miami, Benny overheard 2 of them talking in the green room. For real. I ain't never seen him in the booth. Dude just. Here. Benny acted like he didn't hear it, but the words hit harder than he expected. Still, pride wouldn't let him admit it bothered him. The one person who did say it to his face was Tasha, his youngest child's mother. Tasha didn't sugarcoat anything. She never had. Benny laughed it off, called her dramatic. But deep down, her words echoed. He didn't tell her about the growing tension inside the crew. The king was busy, meetings, interviews, studio sessions, and Benny wasn't as close to him as before. Weeks would go by without a one-on-one conversation. Sometimes, Benny would show up and realize the king had already left for an event without telling him. It was subtle at first, but Benny could feel it. He was being phased out, and it wasn't going to take much for the whole thing to blow. Chapter 6, The Woman That Broke the Bond. It started small. A few lingering glances here, a text exchanged there. Nothing Benny could point to exactly, just a feeling that settled in his gut and wouldn't leave. Jada wasn't shy about her presence. She thrived in the spotlight, flashing smiles, heels clicking on marble floors, her designer bags swinging like trophies. But lately, Benny noticed she wasn't just flaunting. She was claiming territory that felt less and less his. One night, they rolled up to an after-party following a big show in Atlanta. The venue was a high-rise penthouse, dripping with champagne fountains and chandeliers. Benny was still rubbing elbows when he caught sight of Jada, tucked in a corner, laughing too loud, leaning way too close to the king. His stomach twisted. He wanted to believe it was nothing. They're just talking. But the crew started whispering. Phones lit up with pictures. Side conversations buzzing with rumors. Benny's mind raced. Was this the same girl who once told him, "I only deal with men who know how to treat a woman right"? The next morning, Benny couldn't keep it in. He found the king alone in the hotel hallway, lighting a cigarette, calm and collected. "Yo, what's really going on with Jada?" Benny's voice was tense. The king took a long drag, exhaled slow. "She's grown, man," he said with a smirk. "You think you're the only one who knows how to have a good time." Benny's heart sank. Not just the words, the tone, the ease with which the king dismissed him. An argument sparked, electric and volatile. Benny's frustration exploded into accusations about loyalty, respect, and what it meant to be family. The king fired back with his own barbs, calling Benny a hanger-on and a leech. Security rushed in, separating them before fists flew. That night, Benny sat alone in the dark hotel room. Jada's laughter and the king's smirk burned into his mind. The fallout was swift and merciless. Benny found himself locked out, from the entourage, from the shows, from the perks that once seemed endless. Backstage passes were revoked, his phone calls went unanswered, and the party invitations stopped coming. Jada dumped him within the week. No calls, no explanations, just silence. For the first time, Benny faced a harsh truth. The life he'd been chasing was never really his to begin with. He was a shadow, a ghost riding the coattails of the king's rise. And now, even that ghost was fading. Chapter 7, Rock Bottom. The silence was a slow death. No more texts from the crew. No more calls from the king. The phone that used to buzz with party invites and "Yo, where you at?" Messages sat cold and dark on Benny's nightstand. He tried to pretend it didn't hurt. Tried to fill the void with the noise of the streets and the rush of quick cash. But every empty room, every locked door, every sideways glance reminded him how far he'd fallen. At first, Benny tried to reach out. A text here, a call there. "What's up, bro?" To old crew members who once called him family. But the replies were rare and clipped. Invitations dried up. He found himself standing outside clubs where he once walked in like he owned the place, now facing bouncers who didn't know his name or care about it. The liquor stores no longer slid bottles across the counter with a wink. At dispensaries, the nods of recognition were replaced with blank stares. The perks were gone. The free weed, the VIP treatment, the girls who once circled like moths to a flame. Benny's pride kept him from admitting how much it stung. So instead, he threw himself deeper into the only game he knew. A hustle. But desperation makes for bad decisions. He tried scams. Little ones at first. Fake checks, flipping stolen electronics, selling counterfeit goods. When those dried up, he took bigger risks, chasing fast money in darker corners. One deal went sideways. The cops showed up just as Benny was counting bills in a dingy motel room. He barely escaped arrest, but the close call rattled him. His money ran out faster than he could reload it. Rent was late. Child support notices stacked on the kitchen counter like a judge's gavel waiting to drop. The baby mother's patience wore thin. Calls came, first polite, then angry, then desperate. Benny dodged, shrugged, made promises he didn't keep. The guilt piled up, but he pushed it down under layers of smoke and liquor. Only Tasha, his youngest child's mother, stayed close. She wasn't there for the perks or the parties. She wanted something real, a man who'd show up, who'd put in the work. One afternoon, Benny found her waiting outside his apartment. No smile, no softness. Her words hit harder than any insult or fight. Benny looked at the cracked ceiling and realized she was right. The music he wanted to make, the life he wanted to live, none of it was happening. He'd been chasing shadows while his real life crumbled. The nights grew longer, darker. The streets that once buzzed with possibility now felt like a cage. He wasn't just broke, he was broken. Chapter 8, Reality Check. Benny sat alone in the cramped apartment he barely paid rent on. The glow from his laptop, the only light in the room. It blinked back at him like a challenge. Write something. Anything. He stared at the blank page, the cursor flickering, mocking his silence. Words came easy when he was a kid, freestyle battles in the park, throwing down lines that made the crowd roar. But now the words felt heavy, like they carried all the weight of his mistakes. He thought about David the King Dennis, his boy from the block who'd taken everything Benny dreamed of and made it real. The flashy cars, the platinum chains, the sold-out shows. The King wasn't the best rapper growing up, but he had the look, the voice, and the nerve. Benny had been riding that wave, soaking in the glow, thinking his time would come too. But the music industry had changed. Producers wanted upfront money Benny didn't have. Studios wanted commitments and contracts he couldn't afford. Promoters shrugged and said they had their own lineups to protect. Local DJs barely gave his tracks a spin, and the buzz that the King rode like a tidal wave was nowhere to be found for Benny. The few mixtapes he managed to drop got lost in the noise of thousands of other hopefuls. Social media algorithms buried his posts. Gigs were booked at dives with no crowd or pay. The excitement he once felt was replaced by frustration and doubt. His flow wasn't fresh anymore. His rhymes echoed lines he'd heard elsewhere. The passion that once fueled him was buried beneath years of chasing someone else's shadow. He looked in the cracked mirror by his door. The man staring back had dark circles, a scruffy beard, and eyes that told stories of too many late nights and too few wins. He thought about the fast money he chased through scams and hustles. It never lasted. The baby mothers who needed him more than his pride could admit. The children he barely saw, growing up without a real father figure. This wasn't the life he wanted. Benny felt trapped between two worlds, one where he was a groupie hanging onto a star, and the other where he tried to build a name for himself, but found only closed doors. For the first time, he wondered if maybe it wasn't about talent or hustle. Maybe it was about timing, luck, and a little bit of faith. But faith? That was a word he barely remembered how to use. Chapter 9, The Turning Point. Benny stood outside the church for a long time before he stepped through the heavy wooden doors. The familiar sounds of a choir singing old gospel hymns drifted into the street, pulling at something deep inside him he thought had long been dead. The smell of worn wood and candle wax filled the air as he found a seat near the back, trying not to draw attention. The room was packed with faces from the neighborhood, some familiar, many strangers, but all united in the same solemn hope. The preacher's voice was steady, patient, and full of conviction. Benny closed his eyes and let the words wash over him, flooding memories he'd tried to bury. The childhood dreams, the fights, the laughter, the losses. After the service, as people filed out, Benny caught sight of Tasha standing by the exit. Her eyes held that mix of strength and softness he had missed. Someone who believed in him when he barely believed in himself. "Been a minute," she said quietly, as if no time had passed at all. They walked outside into the warm glow of dusk and talked like old friends catching up, but deeper, about pain, about hope, and the hard truth of growing up. "I've been telling you for years, Ben," she said, her voice steady. "It's not about the shine or the hype. You gotta build something for yourself, for your kids, for you." Benny nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. With Tasha's encouragement, Benny started small. He signed up for free online coding classes, something far removed from the beat of the streets and the rhythm of rap battles. At first, it felt foreign, like trying to learn a new language with no guide. Late nights were filled with frustration and questions. Why does this matter? Can I really do this? But every time he logged on, every line of code he wrote, he chipped away at the old him. The man who thought he was only good for hanging on the edge of someone else's fame. Slowly, doors opened. Benny landed an entry-level job in a tech firm working with artificial intelligence, a career that paid steady and gave him something he hadn't had in a long time, stability. But the biggest change was at home. Benny began to show up, not just physically but emotionally. He spent late nights helping his kids with homework, coached his son's little league team, and learned to listen without judgment. The house he bought wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. It was a promise to his children, a place where they could always find him, no matter what. There were setbacks, of course. Old habits tried to sneak back in. Temptations from the past called out like ghosts. But Benny faced them with a new kind of strength, built from faith, love, and the resolve to leave a better legacy. For the first time in a long time, Benny felt whole. Chapter 10, Legacy. The morning light spilled through the windows of the house Benny had bought, a modest but solid place in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't flashy. No gold chains hung on the walls, no flashy cars sat in the driveway. But it was home. As he sat at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee, Benny looked around at the photos taped to the fridge, snapshots of his children, grinning wide, the innocence of youth still fresh in their eyes. A picture of him and Tasha smiling on their wedding day sat beside a faded flyer from his first rap battle, a reminder of the road traveled. The journey here had been anything but smooth. Benny had chased illusions for years, hanging on the coattails of David to King Dennis, soaking up the perks, living a life fueled by attention and empty promises. But that wasn't real. It was a mirage that nearly swallowed him whole. He remembered nights of silence, the sting of rejection, the mounting pile of missed birthdays and broken promises to his children, the crushing weight of realizing that the spotlight wasn't for him, that he had no crown to claim. But he also remembered the moments that changed everything. The church service where grace first touched his soul, the long talks with Tasha, who never gave up on him, the endless hours learning to code, struggling through frustration and doubt, and finally landing a job that gave him purpose and stability. Work in tech wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Each day, Benny helped build software that had real-world impact, a far cry from the fantasy of the music scene. He found pride in creating, in problem-solving, and in knowing that he was building something tangible for his family. Most importantly, he had become the father he always wanted to be. No more distant visits or quick phone calls. He was there for school plays, for late-night talks about dreams and fears. He taught his kids how to navigate the world, how to be strong but kind, how to work hard and stay true to themselves. His children had access to him 24/7, and he treasured that responsibility like a rare gift. His marriage to Tasha was a partnership grounded in mutual respect and shared vision. They leaned on each other through tough times, celebrated victories, and built a life that was real and lasting. Benny knew scars from his past would never fully fade. The missed opportunities, the mistakes, the broken relationships, but he wore them as badges of survival and lessons learned. He often reflected on the true meaning of success, not the glitter or the fame, but freedom, the freedom to be himself, to build a future on his own terms, and to give his children a foundation stronger than any fleeting spotlight. Legacy, Benny realized, was about the love you leave behind. And now his legacy was clear. It was written not in headlines or charts, but in the smiles of his children, the strength of his family, and the steady beat of a life rebuilt. Epilogue. Years had passed since Benny first walked into that church, a man broken but searching. Time had a way of healing wounds, but more importantly, it gave him the chance to rewrite his story. Now, as he watched his children playing in the backyard, laughing, dreaming, living without the heavy chains of the past, Benny felt a deep sense of peace. He knew the road hadn't been easy. There were nights filled with regret, moments when old temptations whispered his name, and days when the weight of his mistakes felt unbearable. But he had chosen differently. Benny had learned that true strength wasn't in flashing gold or commanding crowds. It was in showing up and being present, and in loving fiercely despite faults and failures. His relationship with Tasha was a testament to second chances. They built a life together on honesty, faith, and hard work. Their love wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. The lessons Benny carried were more valuable than any record deal or spotlight. He taught his children the importance of integrity, perseverance, and the courage to change. And as the sun set on another day, Benny smiled, not because he had made it big, but because he had made it right. His legacy was not just a story, it was theirs. A legacy of love, redemption, and hope. Author's note. Thank you for joining Benny's journey, from the struggles of chasing dreams in the shadows, to the hard truth of self-discovery, and finally to the powerful redemption found in love, faith, and responsibility. The Entourage is a story about more than fame or fortune. It's about what happens when we realize our worth isn't tied to others' spotlight, but to the legacy we build with those we love. Benny's story reminds us that no matter how far we fall, the chance to rise again is always within reach, if we're willing to face ourselves honestly and take the steps toward change. May his journey inspire you to find your own path, embrace your own growth, and build a legacy of your own making. Duane Penmanship. A glimpse into the future. Jamal, Benny's eldest, followed his father's footsteps into tech, becoming a software engineer passionate about creating apps that help underserved communities access education. Keisha, his daughter, found her voice in music, but on her own terms, writing honest lyrics about strength and healing, carving out her own space in the industry without shortcuts. Lil Marcus, the youngest, showed a knack for leadership and creativity, blending art and business into a nonprofit that mentors at-risk youth in their neighborhood. Together, they carried forward the lessons of resilience and love Benny worked so hard to pass on, proving that legacy is more than history, it's the promise of tomorrow. The end. By Duane Penmanship.